Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Dead Air Nomad 30 suppressor. I've been a proud owner of Dead Air suppressors since my first Dead Air, which is the Dead Air Sandman S. After I ran the S for a considerable amount of rounds, I did a review on it. You can find it deeper in the channel. I liked it. I liked the way they did things. I liked their QD system, so I bought another one. And then when the Sandman K came out, I also got that, which again, you can find a review on that deeper in the channel. One thing that I guess I always wish Dead Air would do would be a dedicated 5.56/223 suppressor. So when I heard that there was a new suppressor coming out, and I got a little too excited, and I thought that finally they're going to do a dedicated 5.56/223 suppressor. That wasn't the case. They gave us the Nomad. Initially, seeing the Nomad, I was like, well, what does it do that the Sandman S doesn't? I felt like, okay, it doesn't seem to be a significant update to the design. How is it different? How is it better? Or is it just trying to fill a different niche? So I went ahead, or niche, if you will. I went ahead and got my hands on one to see if there was a difference and if the difference made it worth it. Upon getting the Nomad, I noticed some distinct differences. While it is comparable in size, it has a greater diameter, which gives you greater gas volume if that's something you're interested in. It's also lighter, mainly owing to the fact that it's made out of titanium and stainless. So right off the bat, I've got a lighter suppressor with greater volume for gas expansion. So it's not just an update of the Sandman S. It's not trying to be an update of the Sandman S. It's actually a different kind of can. It's I guess what I would consider to be an everyday type of suppressor versus something that's built for specific purposes, such as dedicated lifespan on a full auto firearm, a rifle, if you will, crew serve, what have you, or something that's supposed to be ultra quiet, or something that's dedicated for precision, cans that lend themselves very, very well for precision long-range shooting. The Nomad is kind of something, at least initially, it looked like a suppressor that was trying to do everything well, while not really exceeding in any one category, so you got a can that would be very, very versatile. As far as features go, the Nomad is rated up to 300 Norma. It is a 30 cal can, however, you can change the end caps. If you want to go down to a 5.56 end cap, you can. It's 6.5 inches in length, 14 ounces, and it's got a 1.7 inch diameter. It's not unwieldy, especially at that 14 ounce weight rating. That makes for a pretty light suppressor, even given the almost 7 inch, or depending on how you round up or round down, length. So it lends itself pretty well to a more maneuverable suppressor, being a little lighter so you don't have as much muzzle weight, especially if you're going to run the suppressor on longer guns, such as your traditional 16 inch, or if you're going to put it on a hunting rifle or a long range precision gun. If you're getting it at 18, 20, 22 inches, you're not adding basically a dumbbell at the end of your rifle, which definitely appeals to me. The finish is Cerakote. As you can see, I can't really hide it, not that I would try. The finish is not what you would get right out of the box. In fact, it's well baked at this point, because during my review process I do a 2,000 round course of fire. The very first thing I do in my 2,000 round course of fire is a 500 round accelerated burn down, which means 500 rounds as fast as I can shoot them. Because I have the ability to do so, I'm going to mix in some select fire on that. I've never known Dead Air cans not to be capable of handling the occasional use of select fire, so I wasn't expecting to have any considerable issues when I got into the burn down process, or throughout the review, where I did somewhat liberally mix in select fire whenever I kind of felt the need to get me through that 2,000 rounds a little bit faster. Now, 2,000 rounds, it's a subjective number, but I feel like 2,000 gives us a pretty good look at an accelerated life cycle of a suppressor, or really any firearms-related item. 2,000 rounds is better than, you know, coming in here and doing a video after I fired 200 rounds or 300 rounds. 2,000 rounds gives me a larger sample to look at for overall performance. So the very first thing I'm gonna do right here is the 500 round burn down. Nomad performed well. First round to last round, I didn't notice a significant change in tone. Didn't have any mounting issues. The QD system didn't come loose. While I did start to bake off that Cerakote, I don't really consider that to be a significant issue, just given the materials that the suppressor is made out of, stainless and titanium. I'm not worried about a lock of Cerakote in the immediate future, anyway, creating any issues with the suppressor body for such as corrosion or any issues like that. So as far as the burn down goes, the Nomad definitely passed. Another thing that often comes up, and is often the bane of certain suppressors, is return to zero or significant zero shift. When you're going from suppressed to unsuppressed. If I zero a gun suppressed and then I remove the suppressor, is that going to change my point of impact from my point of aim? Generally, the answer to that is yes. Now, some suppressors deal better with this than others. My experience with some of the dedicated 30 cal suppressors in the past when not shooting a 30 caliber round has been that the POI has been a little bit, the POI shift, I should say, has been a little bit more significant than if I was using, say, a 5.56 223 dedicated can or a caliber specific suppressor for the caliber that I was shooting. So for kind of the zero check I was going to do on this, I used a PWS Mark 116 Mod 1, which is a known 1 MOA gun. It's one of my MOA rifles. 1 MOA rifles that shoots 1 MOA on just about any quality ammunition I'm going to put in it. For the purpose of the test, I used a 55 grain Fiyoshi because that, like I said, that's an ammo I shoot a lot, and I know it to be 1 MOA out of the guns that I shoot it out of that I know are 1 MOA after shooting high quality ammo. I always check them on something like 77 grain OTM, either from MagTech or Black Hills. So I zeroed 5 round group with the suppressor on. Here's that 5 round group. Next up, in the moment of truth for most suppressors, is I'm going to take the suppressor off and fire a second 5 round group, seeing if or how significant the point of impact shift is going from suppressed to unsuppressed. So here's that 5 round group. Now, as you can see, there was a shift. It was somewhat significant. It wasn't world-ending. It wasn't off the target. And again, these are shot at 100 yards. So at 100 yards, that was the shift I had. It's about what I expected. It's not something that's really going to disappoint me. It's just something you have to be aware of. Certain suppressors are going to have more of a shift than others. Generally, with me, I zero with suppressors on because I almost always shoot with the suppressors on. It's very rare that I take the suppressor off for any considerable amount of time. And if a gun like this had a shift like that, if that was something I was going to use, I would definitely have data for being able to dial back into an unsuppressed zero if I absolutely had to take the suppressor off and shoot unsuppressed for whatever reason I was going for extreme accuracy. For general purpose uses, it's not going to be that big of a deal, but you just have to be aware of it. One thing I definitely checked was that consistent, and I did find that it was consistent. Next, I'm going to put the suppressor back on and see if there is a return to zero. Usually, I won't say usually, but sometimes you have some QD systems that just aren't as precise, if you will. And when you take a suppressor off and put a suppressor back on, you lose your zero. So here's a 5 round group after reattaching the suppressor. I would call that return to zero. I'm happy with it. I may need to fine tune just a little bit. Again, it is a QD system. It's not as reliable or as robust as what you're going to get from, say, a direct thread suppressor. They generally have a better return to zero. But for a QD suppressor, I'm very, very pleased with the performance as far as zero is concerned. Throughout the remainder of the zero process, I ran the Nomad not just on 5.56.223, but I also shot it on 7.62x39. It was a good tone. No issues there. It's it's an 11-inch gun. 11-inch guns shooting 7.62x39. Sometimes they can have a little bite to them depending on what kind of suppressor you're using. I didn't have that issue. It also didn't create any cycling issues with the gun moving from one type of round to another. I also shot it on a 6.5 Creedmoor, which allowed for the higher precision that I would expect out of that round, and the suppressor didn't really steal anything away from that gun. That particular 6.5 is the primary weapon system 6.5 Creedmoor. They're AR-10 and 6.5. I know it's just under a 1 MOA gun, and with suppressor attached. Of course, I had to re-zero it once I put the suppressor on because it was zeroed for unsuppressed shooting. But with the suppressor on it, is able to maintain the consistent accuracy that I expect, and maybe improved it just slightly. Although I can't definitively say that was the case because it seemed to be shooting right in there, and that just right around 3/4 of an MOA accuracy that I've come to expect from that gun. During the review process, primarily I shot the Nomad on piston-driven guns. I shoot more piston guns because I shoot for primary weapon systems. I believe in their long-stroke piston system. So as far as gas goes, I didn't have any time really with it on a direct impingement gun. But I can say with a piston-driven gun, gas was very manageable. I didn't have any excess gas caused from the pressure or just the general performance of the can coming back into my face as the shooter. Most of it was venting through the can and through the progressive venting system that's in the long stroke piston system that PWS has. So I can't speak on direct impingement. What I can say is it runs the gun reliably hot or cold as the gun gets warmer, as the gun cools those first couple rounds out. No cycling issues on any of the guns that I shot it on during the review process, which is something I'm very happy about. I've had some other suppressors, especially with long stroke pistons, because they can be a little finicky depending on the suppressor you put on them. That's why they have so many gas adjustment options. The new Mod 2 has 3, the Mod 1s had 4 positions you could adjust, and other guns have very similar settings as far as pistons go. But it wasn't something I had to play with. It was set on position 2, and it ran on position 2 on every gun that I put it on. Recoil is something that suppressors can change. They can change the behavior of the recoil of the rifle. With the Nomad being 1.7 inch plus diameter, I was curious to see if that extra volume the suppressor was going to give me was going to change any of the muzzle behavior during recoil, either on semi or select fire. And I was pleased to find that it didn't. However, Dead Air makes a e-brake, which is something that you can apply to the end of your suppressor. It fits the Nomad very well, but as far as I can tell, you can apply it to any of the Dead Air cans that have changeable end caps. While this wasn't a strict part of the review, I did put it on the suppressor to see if it was going to change the I guess muzzle impulse, the recoil impulse of the Nomad, and it definitely did. The e-brake, and again, this video isn't specifically about the e-brake, but I'm just mentioning it because it was in the video. It definitely changed the behavior. I was able to get my red dot back on target a little bit quicker. I didn't notice as much significant muzzle rise, even though there isn't much at all. Especially on select fire, the gun's very, very controllable with the Nomad on it, and adding the e-brake made it just a little bit more controllable. I'll probably do a separate video on that e-brake system later. It is pretty unique. You don't see a lot of suppressors out there with an after suppressed braking system, and my biggest complaint with brakes has always been that they're incredibly concussive. They're not good indoors, but if you have a suppressor with a brake on it, you get the benefits of the brake being, better control of expanding gases that are coming out of the muzzle after that gas has been suppressed and some of the decibel bite has been taken out of it. So it's definitely a little bit less concussive. It also doesn't create any perceived changes in the intensity of the sound of the shot fired. Final verdict on the Nomad 30. I like it. I don't feel like, me personally, I'm going to replace my Sandman with it. If I'm reaching into my safe and I'm grabbing a Dead Air suppressor for a 5.56, a 7.62x39, or a 308, I'm grabbing my Sandman S. Now, if I didn't have a Sandman S, the Nomad 30 would be an excellent can, and it would be the one that I reach for first if I was looking for a multi-cal can, or if I was looking for something Dead Air specific. It is a good suppressor. I just don't feel like the weight savings and the greater diameter of the can for expansions really makes it worth the squeeze for me. Of course, that's my opinion, but of course this is my review. As a standalone, subjectively or objectively as possible, looking at the Nomad, it's an excellent can. It's lightweight. It's modular. You can shoot it on pretty much any caliber you're going to want to shoot it on within reason, of course. You know, 300 Norma down. It's durable. I wish the Cerakote was a little bit more high temp so it held up to the abuse I put it through. But again, that's me. Not everybody's going to punish a can or hard use a can. I wouldn't say I punished it. I wasn't mad at it. They're not going to hard use a can in much the same way that I'm going to. Even in my own personal practice, I can get my suppressors pretty hot, sometimes glowing red hot, depending on what I'm practicing, what I'm working on, what I'm doing, how I'm training, so on, so forth. So my feeling of the Nomad is it's an excellent suppressor. It's a very good standalone suppressor, but already owning a Dead Air Sandman S, that's still gonna be my go-to can. So if you have a Sandman S, the Nomad could be an excellent choice if you want something a little lighter that's a little bit more multi-purpose. It's not as dedicated hard use as I feel like the Sandman S is. It's something you can throw on a hunting gun, on a truck gun, on just a general purpose everyday rifle, and you're not really gonna have to concern yourself with its performance, because it's still going to do the job very, very well. It's still going to suppress the gun very well. I shot it down to 11 inches and of course up to 18 inches on my 6.5 Creedmoor. It's a good suppressor. I don't really know what else I can say about it. The only really drawback I saw to it was the Cerakote. I didn't really care for the fact that it kind of gave up so quickly, but that's something I can fix on my own, send it in to have it Cerakoted. So that's kind of my feel on the Nomad 30 after 2,000 rounds. If you're interested in picking one up, it's definitely a good suppressor. I'm Eric Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.